Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Passions Podcast. I am your regular host, Latara, back today with nobody. I am all by myself today. I'm all by myself today, mostly because of my own, something that I made a mistake on. So if you like it, great. If you don't, skip it. You know, I don't I'm not going to take it personally if you're like, oh, it's just Latara today. No thanks. But it is just me. So before we get into the episode, or before I get into the episode by myself, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you to Munashe, Brelyn, Lisa, Sid, Sarana, Randall, Hannah, Camelia, Samantha, Jeanette, Eric, Fantasia, Sean, S, Larissa, Maria, Greg Lopez Fitzgerald, Lisa, Jessica Jean, Laura, Karen, Uche, Paige, Casey, Garange, Tom, Shawnette, Pablo, Stephen, Daisy, and Shane. Thank you all so very, very much for being patrons, continuing to be patrons. I really, really appreciate you. To anybody out there who's not a patron yet, if you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/passionspodcast and sign up for whatever tier you find most agreeable. Although I am going to be putting the Patreon on pause for July and August because this June, at the end of June, that'll be the last episode I do until the fall because I need a break, y'all. It's time for a break. So if you do sign up for the Patreon, just know that you won't be charged. And anybody, this is for everybody who's on the Patreon right now, you will not be charged for July or August. So no need to cancel, no need to put do anything. I will pause it and you won't be charged for those 2 months. I am going to do 2 more watch parties in this month, June. So be looking out for that. And honestly, by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be time for the watch party. So with that, it's time to go on with the show. So today we're talking, I keep saying we, but it's just me. I'm going to pretend like I'm with somebody. Okay. Me and my imaginary friend are going to be talking about Passions, episodes 686 through 690. This was a good week. I really enjoyed this week. It's actually a bummer. I don't have anybody to talk to about it, but again, it's kind of my fault. And just a heads up, this is going to be like this for this week and next week because technically I am doing these 2 episodes in the span of 4 days. So again, I made some scheduling mistakes and this is how things have happened. This is just the way the cookie has crumbled. And it's so close to the end that I was like, I'm just going to power through. So just be ready for just me again next week. All right. So we're going to jump into 686 through 690. I think I'm going to start with Theresa this week, especially since I'm by myself. I'm going to start at my favorite place. And that is with Theresa, Ethan, Gwen, this whole thing that's going on here. So when we pick up this week with our lovable lunatic Theresa, Pilar, her family's very angry with her because remember last week she made the announcement to the whole town at the Seascape restaurant that she is the official Mrs. Crane and, she is going to be getting everything that is owed to her, basically, right? So, and I love it. She's stepping into her power. I'm happy about it. Pilar is not. She is not very happy about it. She's very unhappy about it. So, in fact, she's angry with Theresa. So she actually questions Theresa about her motives of calling herself Mrs. Crane. And Theresa says, well, I'm just doing this for me and my baby. Like, this is what's best for my baby. And don't worry, mama, I know what I'm doing, right? Luis jumps into this conversation and he says, I had a conversation with Sam and he also doesn't understand why you would be doing this, why you would be trying to go after the Crane money and get involved with the Cranes. And then he says, Sam thinks it makes you even more suspicious and now you have a motive for killing Julian. She had a motive before, as did everybody else in this town. She had a very good motive before. This is like saying that she would have killed Julian just for the money is a far worse motive than I'm killing him because he ruined my life by taking advantage of me, getting me pregnant, marrying me basically without my knowledge or real consent. And now I've lost the love of my life forever. Like, that was a very good motive for murder. Murdering him for possibly getting the money. Like, they weren't even together as far... Whatever. It doesn't matter. Sam and Luis are both terrible cops. We've established this. So there's no point in me rehashing that. Anyway, I said all that to say somehow Luis is saying that this makes Theresa more suspicious for Julian's murder. So she takes this very poorly, like this information very poorly, and she basically says the same thing I just said, which is everybody had a motive for Julian's murder. Everybody wanted him dead, including you. So, so what are we doing here? So then Theresa talks about how evil Julian was and how everybody wanted him dead. And Louise tries to convince her that the fact that Julian was so evil and the Cranes are so evil is even more reason for her to try to give up on her claim to being a Crane and the Crane money. And Theresa fights back saying, no, we're gonna be rich. We've never had anything. We've had to scrimp and save and sacrifice our entire lives. Why shouldn't all of us benefit from this horrible thing that happened to me? I am for damn sure owed something, but I'm gonna take that and take care of you as well. And I agree with Theresa with what she's saying here. Like, I totally understand that, yes, this is like a plot to get Ethan back. We know that. But it's logical. What she's saying is logical. She is owed at least some sort of compensation for sure. And I don't get why. I mean, that's not true. I do understand why Pilar and Louise have their reservations about this. I don't necessarily understand why they're going so hard against Theresa about it. But I do understand why they have their reservations. And specifically, Pilar gets into the fact that she says that the Crane money is blood money. She doesn't want anything to do with it. They did terrible things to get that money. And she fights Theresa about this money so much, about how much is the Crane money is blood money. The Crane money is blood money. They did evil deeds to get that money. That money is dirty. Don't they pay you? Don't you work for them? Don't you pay your fucking mortgage with Crane money? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually Ivy's trust fund from the Winthrops and it's actually Winthrop money, but their money's probably pretty dirty too, actually. So I think Pilar needs to get off her fucking high horse on this one, talking about it's dirty. And she double, triple, quadrupled down on that over and over and over again, saying that the Crane money is dirty, it's blood money, and she doesn't want to be mixed up with them. Then why do you work for them? Right? Why do you literally work in their house? Like, you work intimately with the Cranes. Pilar, I like Pilar sometimes, but sometimes she really just does not do it for me. She really just doesn't do it for me. And this is one of those times. I do appreciate, here's the thing. Here's what I will say. The part about it being blood money is true. The fact that she's going so hard against Theresa getting some of the blood money when she literally works for them and pays her all her bills with blood money really bothers me. But I think if they had gone the route of Pilar saying, yes, it's blood money, but also I'm worried about you because you don't understand how ruthless the Cranes are and how ruthless they can be. Because she does say that, but she doesn't say it in the context of I'm worried about your well-being. What will happen to you? What will Ivy do to you, right? Or even Alistair, what will they do to you? She says it in the context of they're ruthless people and that's how they got their money. And we don't want to be associated with their dirty money. And I disagree with that portion of it. I wish it was more, I'm concerned for your well-being. But every mother on this show, the mothers on this show don't really care about their kids' well-being. And we will talk about, because Grace this week really pissed me off. So we will talk some more shit about the shitty moms on this show in a moment, momentarily. And by momentarily, I mean probably like an hour or two from now. Okay, but hang in there with me. Hang in there. So Pilar goes on and on and on about how the Crane money is ill-gotten gains. And then she says, money is the root of all evil, Theresa, which that is not the correct saying. First of all, it's the love of money is the root of all evil, right? If you adore money and you have like a love of money and you will do anything to get it, that makes it the root, right? But the money itself is just a thing. Theresa says as much. She's like, money is just a thing. The money's not evil. The Cranes are. There's a very big difference. And we are not the Cranes. We will do good things. I will do good things with this money. We can get a nicer home, a home where the roof doesn't leak every time it rains, and we can get a new AC so we're not dying in here every summer. And Pilar is hearing none of it, really. And Pilar and Louise both just continue to beg her not to take this money. But she says, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna, she says we. She doesn't even say I. She's like, you're gonna get this money, you're gonna like it. You're gonna get this money, you're gonna just take it. You're gonna have to deal. She says, we will not be spending the rest of our lives living in squalor, which I did feel like was strong wording. They do not live in squalor. Like they're I would say, they're working class people, right? So they're not, I wouldn't say they're necessarily middle class, but they're working class people. They honestly, it's similar to the way I grew up, right? Not rich, not in desperate poverty, but also, yeah, we're struggling, right? And it's clear that finances are a problem and are a source of anxiety. So she says, we will not be living in squalor for the rest of our lives. And then she says something about Sheridan. She brings up Sheridan and invokes Sheridan's name, which anytime anybody brings up Sheridan especially to Louise, I find it very tacky because right now, of course, as the audience, we know she's not dead, but as far as they know, she's dead. Stop bringing that lady up to make a point, to like win an argument, especially to Luis. So, but she does that. She says something about how Sheridan was rich and had Crane money, but she wasn't corrupted by it. And then she says some really rough things to Luis, like, do you really think that Sheridan would have been satisfied living in some crummy apartment like with you, Luis? It was really mean. It was when it happened, she wasn't trying to be mean. It was obvious that she had just gotten carried away, but it was very mean. And even she knew it because she immediately apologized because Luis, his feelings got hurt. You could see that he was hurt. And so she immediately apologizes profusely. She's like, I'm so sorry. Of course, Sheridan was different. Luis says to her, yeah, Sheridan was different. And actually, she didn't care about their money at all. She was really excited to start a life with me. And she was excited. She understood that she was going to be a police officer's wife and that she was going to have to cut back. So yeah, she says some really mean things, but then she apologizes. Luis says, she says to Luis, basically, do you think your love was so great and was so important to Sheridan that she would be willing to give up all the money and the status that she had always known to live in squalor with you? Like, that was what she said. And it was really, like I said, very, very mean. Again, she was getting carried away. And I know y'all, everybody will be like, Latara's always making excuses for Theresa. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. She was getting carried away and she said some mean things, but she apologized. So then Luis says, yeah, she couldn't wait to marry me and live in a crummy apartment with me. Sheridan was different. She didn't care about the money. So then Theresa poses a question to him after she apologizes and they are, back at zero. She poses a question to him saying, but Sheridan was worth billions of dollars. Would you have let her use some of her money if she really wanted to make your life easier and the rest of our lives easier? And Luis thinks about it and he goes, I mean, Sheridan was very generous, and if she really wanted to, I guess, yeah, I would let her use her money to make things easier for us. Here's my thing. The use of the word let really drives me crazy. And he does say that they had never had a conversation about it. So I'm going to let it slide. But I feel like if they had a conversation, I hope that Sheridan would have made it clear to him that he doesn't get to let her do anything with her own shit, right? Like, this is my money. I can do exactly what I want with it when I want to do with it. Now, does it make sense to have a conversation with your partner about, like, hey, this is what I want to do with my money. What do you think? And get their opinion on it? Sure. But this idea of him allowing her to use her money is crazy to me. Like, what are you talking about? So anyway, he says, she was really generous. I guess I would, right? So now Teresa's doing a really good job of trying to persuade, even though she's never going to get them on her side. She's doing a very good job of making her case, right? Especially about the money. So then Pilar again talks about how the money is evil and look at what it's doing. It's already tearing us up. It's already tearing us apart. You just said something so hurtful to your brother. And it's already bringing evil into our home, basically is what Pilar says. And then Pilar says, I am not going to let this happen, and I'm going to pray about it. I don't know how those two things work together, but that's what she said. She was like, I'm not going to let this happen to my family, but I'm going to pray about it. I feel like when you pray about it, I guess she's praying to not let it happen to her family. I'm going to let it go. Okay, so then Pilar says, she says, I'm going to pray about it, and that's exactly what you should do too, Theresa. And then she says, do you remember when you used to wear that WWJD bracelet? That stands for, what would Jesus do? And what would Jesus do, Theresa? What would Jesus do in this situation? Which I cracked up. We were watching it on not a house party, on a watch party. I was cracking up I don't know yet if that's going to be the name of the episode, but I kind of want the episode to just be WWJD. I think that's so funny. Everybody used to have those bracelets. I had a WWJD bracelet. Everybody used to have those bracelets. And I did care. What would Jesus do? I never looked at it. I don't think I ever was in a situation and thought to myself, what would Jesus do in this situation? Because I'm not Jesus. I'm nowhere near Jesus level, right? Never have been, never will be. So anyway, after that whole, what would Jesus do, Theresa goes to her room to think, right? And then the zombie Charity appears to Theresa as Julian to pressure her into committing to this plan, because she is still waffling on if she's going to do the plan, go through with the whole plan or not. Like, we've seen her do bits and pieces, but she is still waffling on what she wants to do. So Theresa talks to Devil Julian and tells him that she really is struggling with this. She doesn't want to disappoint her mother. She is clear that it is tearing her up. It's tearing me apart when I have to take the Crane money. Yeah, it is clear that it is tearing her apart. So anyway, she's struggling with what to do. So Zombie Charity appears to her and pressures her to go through with the plan. And she talks about how she doesn't want to, Theresa, she's struggling with it because she doesn't want to disappoint her mother or her brother. And she says, and my mom made a good point about the Cranes. They've been wealthy, but their lives have been filled with tragedy, and regardless of their wealth and status. And then Devil Julian tells her to get over it. He's like, well, get over that, because do you want to be alone, or do you want to be rich, powerful, and get Ethan back? And I mean, when you put it that way, I don't know. I mean, I do like being alone, but I do think being like wealthy and powerful and having the love of my life would be better than being by myself, right? So, because look at me now, all by myself on this podcast. I am struggling. I might have to figure something out for the next one. I might have to figure something out for the next one. All right, so here we go. What's going on with Theresa here? He tells her to get over it. Do you want to be alone, or do you want to be rich, powerful, and get Ethan back? And she says, well, I want to get Ethan back, and I'm gonna focus on that. Like, I'm gonna execute the plan. She decides firmly, I'm going to execute whatever this plan is so that I can get Ethan back. And so she goes back out to the living room and she tells Pilar, I am Mrs. Julian Crane, and I deserve everything that goes along with that title. She says that she deserves the money, and she's going to use it to take care of the whole family. And she says that nothing in life is a sure thing except for the fact that I am Julian's lawful wife. That's what she says. And I'm with it. I'm with it. I agree with Theresa. We're going to get there in a minute, like in a few minutes, truly. There is a moment where I did feel like, okay, there's space for compromise here. But you can't compromise with somebody who's not willing to compromise with you, right? So we're getting to it, but there's a moment where Theresa's ready to compromise, but Rebecca and Ivy, they're not having it. They're not willing to compromise with her. So they're going to have to face the consequences of that, right? They're so greedy and evil and mean and nasty. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on over at the mansion. Ethan has a conversation with Ivy and Rebecca, and he says that he says, I can't believe that Theresa's going after the Crane money. I never knew that she was like this. And Rebecca's like, well, believe it. Teresa has always been exactly like this. A 4-star, no holds barred, manipulative bitch. That's a lot of words to get out at once. She says, you were just too caught up in your love to notice it before. But Ethan stands up for Theresa. He defends her. He says, I won't sit around while you talk shit about her. Like, you don't talk about her like that. So after he defends Theresa, of course, Ivy and Rebecca are like clutching their pearls, right? Like, how dare you stand up for her? I mean, you just called her every name but a child of God. So yeah, I still love her, right? Like, we just broke up. And the only reason we broke up was because she lied to me. But that doesn't change the fact that I was deeply in love with her and wanted to marry her. So no, I can't stand for you talking so poorly about her and so nasty about her. So Ivy then tells Ethan she wants him to go talk to Theresa and try and settle things tonight. And Ethan says, I think we should just leave her alone, and her conscience will lead her to what the right thing to do is. Ethan is correct. I feel like Ethan really, for once, is getting it right. They should leave her alone for a minute. Because remember, this is the same night that she made her big announcement at the Seascape, right? So she, maybe give her some time to think about it. And give her some time to listen to Pilar and Luis, because they all know that Pilar and Luis don't want anything to do with the Crane money. Well, Rebecca probably believes that they do, but I know Ivy knows better, right? But Ivy insists that Ethan go and talk to her, even though he's like, no, we should leave her alone. He decides to go over there. So he goes to talk to Theresa, and she tells him, he tells her, I'm here on behalf of my mother, and see if there's any chance that you will give up on your claim to being Mrs. Crane, right? And Theresa tells him, I am not backing down. I am Julian's wife and the one and only Mrs. Crane. Then Ethan says to her, that could change because I am working on getting my mom's divorce from Julian dismissed. And if that happens, then you will no longer be legally his wife. He says, and if the divorce gets dismissed, then you will be left with nothing. To which Theresa says, when you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. And because that's exactly what I thought. She is responding. Theresa has responded to pretty much everything for the last, I want to say 3 weeks, the exact same way I would. And I think that's why I always liked Theresa so much, is because I can relate to her in the way this might be a little telling, but I can relate to her in the way that she thinks in a lot of ways. Now, are there lots of times where I'm like, what is going through this girl's head? Yes. But like right now, where he says you're going to be left with nothing. Well, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. So I'll be back to net zero. Big fucking deal, right? Like, I'll just go back to my regular life. Like, for Ivy and Rebecca, the stakes are huge, right? Well, Rebecca, not so much, because Rebecca's really out in the cold. She has no legitimate claim. There's just not a chance. But Ivy is she's up on such a high pedestal. She has such a long way to fall, and I can't wait to watch her fall, to be honest. She has a long way to fall. Teresa's already basically at the bottom of the totem pole, at the bottom of the ladder. So I fully and wholeheartedly agree with her. She was like, I don't have anything, so I don't have anything to lose. Now, granted, we know how ruthless and evil Ivy and Rebecca can be. So it's like, you might think you have nothing to lose because you don't have anything monetarily to lose, but you do have a lot to lose, like your life, right? Right? And y'all know where I'm going with that. You have a lot to lose. But I do agree with Theresa as far as like how he was thinking of it. You're going to be left with nothing. She's like, I don't have anything financially. So I have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Why would she give up? She has everything to gain and nothing to lose monetarily, right? So then Ethan asks her, like, why are you doing this? He says, there must be some other reason. And she goes to him, you don't know, Ethan? How do you not know? Girl, of course he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything. You were engaged to this man for like a year, 2 years. Y'all been engaged for a while. You don't know that he literally is one of the dumbest people in Harmony. But anyway, she tells him, I'm doing this for justice. Julian took advantage of me and I want justice. And Ethan says, well, claiming to be Mrs. Crane won't get you that. It's not going to get you any justice. And she says, I deserve some of that Crane money, and cites the fact that if she had married Ethan when he was still a Crane, she would be entitled to Crane money and, Crane status, right? And he's like, and he agrees, yes. But then he says, but this is different. And she says, how? How is this different? He goes, well, you didn't love him. Stop saying that, Ethan. Stop saying that. He's so annoying. Well, you didn't love him. And Theresa says the exact same thing she's been saying. Neither did Ivy. Ivy didn't love him either, right? So she says, neither did Ivy. And yet she lived as Mrs. Crane for years and is still fighting to hang on to that title and the money. So it seems to me we don't have anything more to talk about. He says, and she says, so I will see you out. Oh, I love it. I think this might be the second or third time we've seen her kind of show him the door. And I think she does it again later. I love it. She says her piece and then she says, and now you can go. You are dismissed. Dismissed. I love it. I love it. And so she says, we don't have anything else to talk about. I will see you out. And she shows him the door. He walks through the threshold. This was great. He walks through the threshold, turns back around as if he's had something to say to her. And she cuts him off saying there's nothing more to say and closes the door in his face. I, as a person who is an avid hater of Ethan Crane, or whatever his name is, Ethan Winthrop, I love watching her slam the door in his face. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. That I really do. So that's when Ethan calls his mother and gives her the bad news. He says, she's not budging. Then Ivy calls Marty, that drug dealer she hired to drug Whitney. She calls him. So I guess he's like into all kinds of nefarious things, which would make sense, I guess. She calls him and she tells him, it's me, Ivy, your richest client. She says that. And she says, we're going to have to start playing hardball with Theresa and we're going to have to play dirty, very dirty. So we'll see where that goes. That does not come up again, but I'm very interested to see what her little plan with Marty is as it relates to Theresa. So Ethan goes back to the mansion. I think we're either that night or the next day, like the morning. He is working on his mother's case, like looking through legal records, I guess, and looking through precedents and things of that nature. And then he gets a call from Harper. If you recall, Harper is the lawyer who was facilitating Julian and Theresa's annulment. So he's the one who knows all the things about the marriage and everything. And I think he also facilitated the divorce between Ivy and Julian. So it would be weird to me that, so let me say what happened. So he gets the call and he says, give it to me straight, Harper. Who is Julian's legal widow and heir? And we don't hear the answer to that on the phone call, but we will find out in a moment. Let's talk about what is going on with Theresa. So the next day, Theresa is getting ready to go over to the Crane Mansion to talk to Ivy and Rebecca when Whitney shows up. And Whitney comes in and she tries to talk Theresa, out of trying to lay claim to the Crane money and the Crane name. And she also tries to talk her out of going to the mansion. And she tells Theresa, Ivy and Rebecca aren't going to just roll over. They are two snakes, and they won't rest until they see you dead, basically. But Theresa says, I'm a fighter. I've had to fight for everything that I've ever gotten. But Whitney's like, yeah, I think this is a different kind of fight, honey. I don't know if you're ready for this, basically. So Theresa responds with, basically, those two bitches are just jealous of me. They're just blowing hot air. There's nothing they can do to me. She says, I have the law on my side, as if anybody in this town upholds the law. Nobody in this town upholds the law, which, by the way, that's going to come up later too, about Sam and Louise, who are terrible at upholding the law in this town. So she says, I have the law on my side, Whitney. But Whitney says the Cranes make up their own laws and they can bend them any way they want. And that's a good point. That's a good point. When you have money and you have status like that, the laws don't apply to you the same way and with the same severity that they do to poorer people, right? People of lower status and with less wealth. So then Theresa says something about, I don't know how we necessarily got here, but it's the next note, so I'm going to just say it. Theresa explains that the reason that she is doing this is to get Ethan back. I guess it was just a way to kind of clue people in who haven't seen it or don't know exactly what's going on. She says she's doing this to get Ethan back, and Whitney is like, yeah, and that's another thing. How in the hell is this supposed to get him back? Like, you're going against his mother, and maybe he would have sided with you before. Like, maybe there was a time when he would have sided with you, but he certainly is not going to be on your side now. And then Whitney tells her, you're fighting a losing battle. Ethan is never going to choose you over his own mother, especially not now. And then they talk about Theresa's bargain in hell. Again, it's just a little recap. But Whitney makes a good point. She says, yeah, why would you go through with this? You're going to invite evil back into Harmony. And remember what happened the last time with the Bennett home and how it got sucked to hell and demons were brought out into the open. And she says, what if that happens? Do you really want that on your conscience? Like, do you really want to be the one who brought hell into Harmony? And Whitney pressures Theresa about the money, saying, you're going to do all of this and possibly hurt a lot of people, not just Gwen, Ivy, and Rebecca, because maybe you're bringing evil back to Harmony, right? And you're doing all of this because of Ethan. No, I think that your motives also have to do with the money. And I don't know why they're making it such a big deal and such a moral failing to want money. That is not that big of a deal. But the way Whitney was talking to her is like, she says, admit it. So again, asking somebody to admit something, that means you're accusing them of something, right? And so it's very accusatory. She's like, admit it. You're not just doing this for Ethan. You're also doing this for the money. You really want the money. In fact, she says, you're hungry for the Crane fortune and power. Ugh, okay. But Theresa makes the point that I just made, which is, she says, since when is it a sin to want more than what you came into the world with, right? I agree. There's nothing wrong with her want. And let us not forget, as far as we all know, this 19-year-old girl is pregnant with her attacker's baby, basically, right? With this man's baby who took advantage of her. And on top of that, that man is dead and gone, so she's a widow, and she's married to him. She does deserve something. She deserves to get some money, and the Cranes are actual billionaires. They could give her $10 million and not hurt right? They could give her $50 million And she would be fine for the rest of her life. Not just fine, she'd be incredibly well off for the rest of her life if they just gave her a few $1,000,000, and they would not be hurting at all, because $1 billion is an unfathomable amount of money, right? And multiple billions, forget it. Forget even wrapping your mind around how much money that actually is, right? So I agree with Theresa. It's not a sin to want more than what you came into this world with. And then she says, Ivy and Rebecca do not scare me. And in fact, they owe me. I agree. I mean, I think the estate owes her. I think Julian's estate owes her. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's Ivy and Rebecca owes her really anything except for maybe an apology, right? But as far as the money goes, the estate, Julian Crane's estate owes her for sure. So Whitney finally says, I agree that you deserve to get something. You should be compensated in some way. She says, but you can't just go in there and start attacking Ivy and Rebecca and expect to come out the victor. They're too mean and too proud to allow that to happen. You will never win. And then she says, also, this isn't just about being fair. This is like based on some bargain you made with Julian's damn spirit. That's what she said. It's so funny to me. This isn't all about just you wanting justice. This isn't all about just wanting to be fair. This is also based on some kind of weird bargain you made in hell. And that is the part where I am 100% on Whitney's side. Like, yeah, you're doing some kind of hell bargain. I don't know if I would be able to get on board, because especially considering I wasn't the one that made the bargain. Like, if you're the one who made the bargain, it would be tough to try and finagle out of it, because there certainly would be consequences, right? But if I didn't make the bargain, yeah, no, it's easy for me to say, yeah, no, we shouldn't do this. No, I don't want any parts of this. So at this point, Theresa seemed to have like an epiphany. She was like, oh, I know what I need to do. And she's smiling. She's like happy. And so she hops up and she tells Whitney she's got to go over to the Crane mansion. And she tells Whitney, I'm not going over there to fight, and I'm not going over there to hatch my plan. Like, this isn't part of the plan hatched in hell. I just came up with a solution that will appease Ivy and Rebecca and provide for me and my baby. And so she runs out. And I'm still interested, because we'd never heard what her idea was. But so I'm very interested in what her idea was, because I bet it was good. But Ivy and Rebecca, wait till y'all hear what these two bitches did. So let's talk about what's going on at the mansion while all of this is happening. Over at the mansion, Ivy and Rebecca have formed an uneasy alliance, right? They've decided the enemy of my enemy is my friend, basically, right? So they are on each other's side to the extent of getting rid of Theresa. But once Theresa is out of the picture, they will go back to being like going head to head against which one of them will be the real Mrs. Crane, right? So they've decided to eliminate Theresa as a threat so that they will then only have to face each other. And also they are on the same side when it comes to Ethan getting together with Gwen. So that's something that they really, really want together. So, okay. So they form this alliance, they shake hands, and Ivy says, we're going to make mincemeat out of that tacky taco queen. Like, what is she saying? What are you saying? Oh, God. I think, okay, and I've probably said this before. When Rebecca does it, it's like, okay, it's expected. Rebecca probably doesn't have any friends of any background outside of white, right? But Pilar, even though, again, they are going through like a rough patch in their friendship, Pilar has been Ivy's best friend for like 25 years and her confidant for like 25 years. I just couldn't see myself letting stuff like that come out of my mouth about, one, my friend's daughter, but also like that's their ethnicity. It's super racist. And the fact that she has no problem or qualms about that after having a relationship with a Hispanic woman or a Latin woman, a Latina woman, just throws me a bit. I don't like it, but I've been saying for a while that Ivy's not great, right? Like, she was never a very good friend to Pilar. So I guess I should just let it go. Ivy's a villain, and it is what it is. I hate that though, because I really want her to be more multidimensional, and she was more multidimensional, and now they've just made her kind of evil. They've just made her an obstacle, and she deserves, Ivy as a character deserves better, in my opinion, than just being this like nasty, venomous obstacle in Theresa's way. But what do I know? Anyway, so they agree with each other, and then I think Rebecca says, yes, Theresa doesn't have a leg to stand on legally. And that's when Ethan enters the chat and he's like, not so fast, Rebecca, you may not be right about that. And he tells them that he was on the phone with Harper, and that Theresa apparently has a decent case because she can prove that she and Julian consummated their marriage because she is pregnant, right? And then he tells them, until we can prove that Ivy's divorce from Julian wasn't legal, then Theresa is Julian's legal next of kin and legal heir. I mean, yeah, that's what she's been saying. He's a lawyer. He should have known that, but he had to hear it from another lawyer. He had to hear it from another lawyer, right? Because he's an idiot. So Ivy gets really upset. She's so angry, and she's like, well, then prove it. Prove it, Ethan. Prove that my divorce wasn't legal. She says, my entire future hinges on my being Julian's widow. And then Rebecca's like, what about me? I just love every time, because Ivy's like serious, right? But the Rebecca stuff is so unserious. She was married to Julian for what? A day before all of this came out. And there's two other people in line before she could ever even possibly make a claim, right? It's just so unserious. And so every time she pipes up like, what about me? I'm like, what about you? And I think Ivy said the exact same thing. What about you? But she says that she is actually Julian's rightful widow since he hated Ivy, which that has nothing to do with the legality of it, girl. Since he hated Ivy and he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. But Gwen then sides with Ivy, and Ivy and Ethan are both surprised by this. But Gwen makes a very good point. She's like, I mean, I would hate to think that if my husband left me for someone else, served me with a quickie divorce and then left me for someone else and then died, I would be left with absolutely nothing. Like that's not fair. I do think that Ivy deserves way more than my mother does. Yeah, I agree. Gwen makes some good points this week. Not a lot. And that's not shade. That's saying she just wasn't in the episodes that much. But when she was making some salient points. So Gwen and Ethan then go back to the library to continue working on this case. And Ivy and Rebecca go back to kind of plotting on Theresa. While in the library, Ethan and Gwen have a conversation, and Gwen basically says Gwen basically says that she doesn't agree with their mothers, that Theresa deserves nothing. She says she definitely deserves some compensation. And Ethan says, oh, Gwen, I'm so surprised you're being so generous considering the history that between you and Theresa. And she's like, yeah, I mean, there's no love lost between me and Theresa, but I can think logically about this, and she does deserve something. Like she is carrying Julian's baby after all. She does deserve something. So again, like I said, she made some good points this week. So yeah, they're talking in the library. And then Theresa shows up and goes to the living room, right, where says she wants to talk to Ivy and Rebecca. So she tells them, I have something to tell you. I have something to say. And they, of course, are just, I mean, of course, they're on the defensive, but it's beyond defensive. It's almost defensive offensive, right? Because not only do they have the guard up, but they're also throwing just like jabs and barbs at her before she even gets to say anything. So you can't really call that defensive. It's offensive, right? Because they are actively being mean and nasty to her. So, but she shows up and tells them that she's there to make peace. She doesn't want to fight. And she says, I believe that we can act like mature adults and come to some sort of agreement that works for all of us. I love it. I loved it. This whole scene hurt my heart. It made my stomach hurt, and it made my heart like palpitate, because Theresa, again, a reminder, Teresa's like 18 or 19 years old. Ivy and Rebecca are in like, I imagine they're 40s, right? Like mid to late 40s. These are grown ass women. She's a child. And she's a child who's in over her head. They have no sympathy, no empathy for her whatsoever. And she really has come to them in all sincerity. And if we're being honest, she hasn't done anything to either of them, really. I mean, the Gwen stuff, I guess you could say by proxy, what and again, I do not subscribe to the idea that she stole Ethan from Gwen, right? I simply do not subscribe to that. So even when I think of it through that lens, it's like, she hasn't done anything to you. She hasn't done anything to Rebecca at all. And Ivy, now we know Ivy has her suspicions about if Theresa even was the person who sent the letter to the tabloid in the first place. Because I talked about that a few weeks back, where Ivy, she actually basically accuses Rebecca of being the one to do it. So it's up in the air for her. And that was the only thing that really sent her over the edge of I hate Theresa, right? And right, she learned about the lies and with Ethan, so she's worried that she's gonna hurt her son or whatever. I get that. I hear y'all. I know there's somebody out there listening who's like, no, but she lied to Ethan and that's her son. And I get it. I totally get it. But if we're being honest about what Theresa has done to specifically to Ivy or Rebecca, you are going to come up with nothing. Oh, wait a minute. She did attack Ivy. I forgot about that. Wait a minute. I do have to, let me run that motherfucker back because she did attack Ivy when Ivy had that, whatever it was. Oh, the annulment papers, I think it was. And she beat the hell out of that wheelchair. I did forget about that. Oops. She did do that to Ivy, but they were already in their fighting phase, right? Like it was already like, look at me. I will always make excuses for Theresa. No, they were already in their like phase of fighting. Ivy had already crossed over to I hate Theresa, right? And the reason she hates Theresa is because of the tabloid thing. But Theresa didn't even do that. So I said all that to say, she sits down and wants to have a conversation with Ivy and Rebecca, a mature adult conversation with them and make peace. She says she's there to make peace. But honey, Ivy is having none of it. Ivy is spitting straight venom. Truly. Like I said earlier, it was honestly kind of hard to watch because this is a child, and having somebody say some of these things to me at 35 would send me into a spiral, right? So Ivy, she says to Theresa, she says, anything you have to say is just another ploy of yours to gain entree into a world into which you were not born. I mean, she comes in hot, right? We start off with the classism, right? This is just a lie to gain entree into a world into which you were not born. And then she says, but you must have realized that you don't have a legal claim on Julian's name or on the estate. And Theresa says, no, I have a very strong claim if I choose to use it. And Ivy and Rebecca should just listen. She says, no, I have a very strong claim if I choose to use it. Rebecca then doubles down on what Ivy just said. And she says, no, you came here to cut some kind of deal because you figured out that if you go against the two of us, you're going to get nothing. And you may be good at getting what you want, but Ivy and I are better. You know what Rebecca had to say, I kind of liked. I liked what she's like, you may be good at getting what you want, but Ivy and I are better. I was like, yeah, that's kind of cute. You ate with that little one. So Theresa tries to explain to them, no, you have it wrong. I'm really here trying to make peace with you. And Ivy says, why would a girl like you come here to make peace? Why would a girl like you it was just dripping with classism, racism. It was like, it was all implied, right? Why would a girl like you? And disgust, like sheer disgust at the fact that Theresa even exists. And I gotta give shout out to the actress Kim because she plays it so well. It gave me chills. But she says, why would a girl like you come here to make peace? And Theresa says, well, I've just realized that the way I acted last night was beneath me and I want to work things out nicely. Ivy tells her, whatever act that you're doing, whatever candy you're selling, we're not buying it. And she says, you're wasting your time, Theresa. Why don't you just crawl back to the gutter you came out of? It was so mean. And what's her name? Whitney is standing there for all of this. She's just standing like in the back of the room, just watching it all. And she tries to speak up for Theresa. She's like, no, Theresa really is trying to, make peace with you. And Ivy says, oh, come on, Whitney. How can you be so naive? And I want to be clear. The fact that Ivy even has the guts, gall, audacity to even look or think in Whitney's direction after she drugged her. And it made me so sick because Whitney is actually standing in the room with her attacker and has no clue. Whitney is standing in the room with her attacker and she has no idea that that's the person that did that to her. And so it really bothered me, the fact that she even had anything to say to Whitney. Shut the fuck up talking to Whitney. Don't you dare talk to Whitney like that, especially. So anyway, she tells Whitney she's being naive, and then she goes back to laying into Theresa. And then Ivy calls for security, and Theresa tells her, stop it. Stop this. You used to like me. You liked me when we first met. And you even told me that you saw there was something about me that reminded you of yourself when you were younger, when you were my age. You liked me. Ivy has no rebuttal. Security comes in and Ivy just instructs them to throw Theresa out. Gwen walks in because she hears the commotion. And it's crazy because Gwen, you know what? it doesn't matter. Gwen walks in after having heard the commotion, and she's like, what the hell is going on here? And Theresa pleads with her. It's like, Gwen, please where's Ethan? I need to talk to Ethan. I'm sure if he hears what I have to say, he will understand if I could just explain things. But Ivy then tells Theresa, Ethan doesn't want to talk to you. Ethan wants nothing to do with you. And in case you have forgotten, he is on my side. You lost all credibility with him because of all your lies. And he now knows exactly what you are truly made of. In fact, he left specific orders for you to be thrown out of the house should you show up. And then Rebecca, because Teresa's like, I don't believe that. And Rebecca's like, oh, but it is true. But it's true, darling. She tells her, I heard it myself. He also said that he's going to be working day and night to make sure you don't get a dime of the Crane fortune. And then security sees Whitney and Theresa out, like escorts them out. So once Teresa's gone, Ivy and Rebecca are so proud of themselves. They're just like, ha, we showed that bitch. They're so proud of themselves. But Gwen takes them to task for lying. And she says, you know what? I'm actually going to tell Ethan the truth. And he's going to be furious about this. And so Ethan comes in, and when she says that, Ivy and Rebecca are both like, what, you want Theresa to win? And she's like, no, but I just don't want to get Ethan back through scheming and lying and manipulation. Good for you, Gwen. I like this. I like I love it. I love where her head is at. And so she says, I'm gonna tell Ethan the truth. He's gonna find out. Because she was like, what? How's Ethan gonna feel when he finds out? He's gonna be furious with you two. And they were like, how's he gonna find out? Who's gonna know? How would they know? No, they say, how's he gonna find out? And she's like, I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna tell him. So Ethan walks in on the tail end of this conversation. And he's like, tell me what? So she explains exactly what just happened. He is very upset with both Rebecca and Ivy. And he tells them, both of you need to face the fact that Theresa may have a very strong legal claim. And he says, pulling a stunt like this will only make a bad situation worse. And so then he decides to go and talk to Theresa and try to smooth things over. So after he leaves, Rebecca says, you know what, we're going to need some help to try and get rid of Theresa. And so she says, and I know exactly where to get the help. And then she walks away, and I was like, is she going to call Alistair? I mean, I get why they haven't called Alistair yet, because once you bring Alistair into it, he's such a wild card. He might leave all of us in his wake, right? If you bring Alistair into it, Theresa might not be the only one who loses her position and goes down, right? He might send all you bitches packing, and he has the power to do so. Okay, so she says she knows how to get the help they need to get rid of Theresa. And so then she goes to the library and she starts calling out for Julian, because remember when they were at the Seascape restaurant, Evil Charity appeared to Rebecca in the bathroom as Julian and told her that Theresa was the one who killed him, right? So she's looking for him. She's calling out to him, Julian, Pookie, Julian, are you here? Are you over here? She's looking all around the library. At one point she pulls the top off the brandy bottle and is looking down and like, are you down there, Pookie? Which I just thought was a funny, and I don't know if that's action that the director gave her, or if she chose that action, because it's great. It's great. Because of course you would look inside the brandy bottle, look for the alcohol to find Julian. So she's looking around for Julian, and that's when Ivy rolls in and is like, what the hell are you doing? She says, has the Botox finally pickled your brain, Rebecca? I love that. Has the Botox finally pickled your brain, Rebecca? And then Rebecca explains what happened, that Julian had appeared to her and told her that Theresa was the one that killed him. Ivy doesn't buy it. And Rebecca is like, I'll prove it, and just tries to like call out to him again, but nothing comes of this. Nothing comes of this. So outside the mansion, Theresa, who has been thrown out of the mansion, she is pissed. As well she should be. That was a very nasty altercation wherein she did not do anything wrong. She showed up ready to make peace, ready to compromise, ready to back down, ready to put this all behind them. And she was met with vitriol. She was met with the really hurtful, mean language. She was met with being called every name but a child of God. She was met. I would be pissed too. I tried. And she says that to Whitney. She says, well, you saw it. I tried. And I like that, because that's how I am. I will try. Exactly one fucking time. I will try. But if my sincere attempt at like an apology or what have you, or of making things right, is met with defensiveness, offensiveness, with name calling, with any kind of disrespect, that's the thing. If my respectful attempt at making a situation right is met with disrespect, and it takes one time for me, I tried, and that's all I can do. All I can do is try, and I'll be damned if I'll try again. I'll be damned if I'm going to let you make a fool of me again, right? And so she says as much to Whitney. She says, you saw that. I tried, but now I'm going to get everything I'm entitled to, and I will win, even if I have to deal with the devil himself. She's done. She's done trying to negotiate with them. Finished. It's over. So then she goes home. She's pissed. She's like, I can't believe that I got thrown out of my very own house right now, which I felt like was a little overkill. Like, girl, that's not your house. Like, it wasn't even Julian's house. It's Alistair's house. Right. So, but she says, I'm through being nice. If Ivy and Rebecca want war, well, then that's what they're going to get. Yes, girl. If Ivy and Rebecca want war, well, that's what they're going to get. They about to get war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Except in this case where I guess war is good for getting the Crane money. So she says they have no idea how down and dirty I can fight. This is when Ethan shows up and Theresa is angry with him. She says, oh, Ethan, I have a few choice words for you. But before they exchange any words, really, Ethan explains that he had nothing to do with having her thrown out of the mansion, and that what they said to her was none of what they said to her was true. And so she believes that. She's like, I should have known that you would never do that. I think she actually apologizes to him for believing it. And then he tells her, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a solution to make everybody happy. And then they go back and forth about all the legalities. Again, the same conversation we've had, where he's like, well, but you didn't love him. And she's like, but Ivy did, whatever. And then Ethan says, you and my mother both have rights, and I'm just trying to bridge the gap between you. And he says, if you drop your claim, then I will make sure that my mother provides for you and the baby. And so I think this is very naive of Ethan to say that. First of all, he doesn't have any authority over Ivy, none whatsoever. So to say to Theresa, I need you to drop your claim against this woman who absolutely hates you and has been very clear that she wants you to have nothing and end up with nothing and have a horrible life. But if you drop your claim, I'll make sure that she, takes that back, and I'll make sure she takes care of you. It would be stupid of Theresa to believe that. Ethan doesn't have any authority or power over Ivy at all. He can't make her do shit. He can't make her give Theresa any money. He can't make her pay Theresa any child support. He can't do anything. But Theresa's considering it, right? Because she believes in Ethan. Dumb mistake. But big mistake. Huge. She believes in Ethan, and so she tells him she'll think about it. But first she does say to him, like, why are you doing this? Why are you saying you'll make sure I'm provided for? Why do you care if I'm provided for or not? And he says to Theresa, well, I just want you to be happy. I always have, and I always will. And then she responds with, because you still love me, right? And he says, of course, I do love you. I always will love you. But after all the lies you've told me, there's no chance we're going to be able to get back together. That's what he says to her. And he says, if you do the right thing, which I didn't love the framing of this, that the idea of Theresa giving up her claim to being Mrs. Crane and what she is owed from the Crane fortune is, quote, the right thing to do. Why is it the right thing to do? What makes that the right thing to do? I wish somebody would explain it to me. If all y'all out there listening, explain to me how Theresa giving up on the fact that she 100% is married to Julian and was his legal wife at the time of his death, how her giving up her claim to being his next of kin and getting his portion of the estate, how that's the right thing. That doesn't make sense to me. Do the right thing, especially because I totally get that they're like framing this around Ivy and how Ivy deserves so much because of the years that she put in with Julian. But Ivy has bared her fucking teeth at Theresa. Ivy has Ivy has done her part in destroying Theresa. How is giving over to Ivy the right thing? Ugh. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, I don't know. Whatever. So anyway, he tells her to do the right thing and that the Cranes will do right by you. I promise. You are not a Crane. You don't have any fucking authority. You don't have any authority to say that the Cranes will do right by her. You're not even a Crane. Shut the fuck up. That drove me crazy. I promise that the Cranes will do right by you. They didn't do right by you. They kicked you out immediately. Once they found out that you weren't one of them, they kicked you the fuck out, left you with nothing. Why do you think they would do anything for Theresa or take care of her in any way? The Cranes are not going to do right by her, and you can't promise that, jackass. So anyway, she tells him she'll think about it, and get back to him. And she says, you've almost. This was interesting. I wasn't sure what she was exactly getting at here. I think I do, but I'm not entirely sure. She says, you've almost persuaded me. Is there any other incentive that you can offer me? And he says, nope, just that you'll be doing the right thing. And then he leaves. So when she says that, are there any other incentives? It almost sounded like she was like, if you give me some dick, maybe. Like it felt like she was propositioning him sexually, honestly. But I imagine it was like getting back together or seeing each other more or something like that, but hoping that he would say something to that effect. But that's not what he said. He said, nope, just that you'll be doing the right thing. And then he leaves. So after Ethan leaves, Theresa has a little conversation with Whitney where she tells her, I thought it over and I'm going to go back to the mansion and I'm not going to cause any trouble. I'm just going to go back there to tell Ethan that I'm going to do what's right and not go after Julian's money or cause any trouble. And she tells Whitney, I need to show Ethan that I'm worthy of his love, trust, and faith. And so she goes back to the mansion. But when she gets there, she sees Ethan and Gwen, and they've been having a little conversation. So she walks in on the tail end of this. She doesn't see the whole of the conversation. She only sees like the end part. So let me give you the whole thing. So Ethan and Gwen are having a little conversation where Ethan is once again praising Gwen for her generosity towards Theresa and just not being bitter to the point of wanting Theresa to end up with nothing, even after everything that has happened. And so then they hug each other. And Gwen gives him like a friendly almost kiss, but it's on the lips. So they kind of do a peck on the lips like that. That's the part that Theresa saw. Theresa walks in on they are embracing. They give a kiss. She turns right around and decides, fuck this. Nah, I'm going to, you know what? Never mind, actually. I'm going to get everything. I'm going to get everything. And honestly, unfortunately, I'm going to be on Theresa's side, but what she says is damn Gwen. She's like, damn Gwen, I won't let Ethan go. Look at her, right? But we just heard Gwen saying she's not Theresa's biggest fan by any stretch of the imagination, but she definitely is more charitable when it comes to Theresa than Ivy or Rebecca are. But Theresa doesn't know that. I think she has lumped the three of them together because, and as she should, when you think about it, every conversation she's ever had with Gwen since the end of Gwen and Ethan's relationship, every conversation Theresa has ever had with Gwen has been very clear about, I hate you and I think that you're evil and I don't want anything to do. Like, Gwen has been very clear about her disdain for Theresa in every conversation that they have ever had. So Theresa, again, any conversation they've ever had since the demise of Ethan and Gwen's relationship, right? So it makes sense that Theresa would lump her with Rebecca and Ivy, because frankly, Gwen has said some really horrible things to Theresa too. So, but she didn't hear the part of the conversation where Gwen was saying like, Theresa deserves to get some compensation. I don't want to see her, destitute with nothing. Right. So Theresa turns around, says, damn you, Gwen, and decides she's going to keep her pact with the devil and get her revenge on all of those bitches. That's what she says. And she's going to get Ethan back. That's the plan, Stan. So that took a while. It took quite some time, but we made it through that portion of the episode. Okay, so that is all for the Theresa, Ethan, Gwen stuff this week. And now it's time to get into our magic storyline. It's time to talk about some magic, people. The stuff that's going on in magic is pretty interesting. We're learning some new things. We had an appearance from Faith, which I never thought Faith was ever coming back. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Faith was why do I want to say Beth? What's this lady's name? Faith was Grace's twin sister who died in a fire before Grace was able to meet up with her again, right? Tabitha actually set that fire and killed Faith, which is going to be important in these episodes. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right. Miguel, Kay, Charity, all of this bullshit, these children. So Miguel and Kay are talking about Charity, and Kay says, maybe it's for the best that she's changed now and not after they're married. So just like a reminder that the last week we saw Charity basically breaking up with Miguel. telling him she wants nothing to do with him, and being really nasty and not sitting with them at the Seascape restaurant, like that whole thing, and being just like very, very distant. So after dinner, Miguel and Kay are like out for a walk, and this is what she says to him. She's like, maybe it's for the best that she changed now and not after y'all were married, because we're Catholic after all. We don't believe in divorce. That's literally what she says. We're Catholic. And that would have been a disaster for you if she had changed and now you're stuck with her for the rest of your life. And so Miguel starts to talk to Kay about how grateful he is that she's always been the same. You've always been the same, Kay, and you've always been there for me. And they have a conversation about Miguel. And listen, I didn't take great notes. I'm sorry, y'all. Again, this was one of the episode we were watching on the watch party, and I just don't take the best notes when we're doing the watch party. But Miguel talks about how his mama always told him he should be with somebody who's a friend, somebody he could be, trust, and that the best relationships come from friendships. And then she says something about to the effect of like, my grandpa used to tell me basically the same thing. I wish I had written it down, but I didn't. So we're gonna all just get over it. So then they are, just out for a walk. Meanwhile, Grace and Sam are at their house in the kitchen talking mad shit about Kay. Like, I did not like this. More so Grace than Sam. It was Grace talking shit to Sam about Kay. That's really what it was. And she says to him, I think she's trying to take advantage of this sad situation. It's just sad to see our daughter trying to take advantage of such a sad situation between Miguel and Charity. And at that moment, Kay and Miguel walk through the door, kind of laughing and joking together. And Grace gives Miguel some tomato soup cake and then tells Kay that she and Sam want to talk to her in the living room. So they take her to the living room, and Kay already knows what this is about. And so she's on the defensive, and she says, I don't want to hear it. If this is about Miguel and me, I don't want to hear it. You guys are unbelievable. I want you to just admit that you only care about Charity and you couldn't care less about me. Sam takes issue with this. He's like, that statement isn't true. That's not fair. Grace doesn't say that, though. Grace is like notably quiet when that's said. So anyway, I'm just making my own observation. Kay asks Sam, if I was with Miguel, wouldn't you just be happy for me and happy that we were together because he's such a great guy? And Sam says, well, I just can't imagine that happening. The two of you just aren't right for each other. Based on what? Based on what metric, Sam? Where are you getting your data? Like that you two just aren't right for each other. How can you say that when these two people have been best friends their whole lives? What do you mean they're not right for each other? I would understand if Sam was like, I just can't imagine it. You two have been such good friends all your lives. It just never seemed like there was anything romantic between you. But to say you're not right for each other, I think is crazy and wild, especially considering these are two teenagers who are likely to grow and change as they live their lives, right? And they're getting older. I don't know. It's just weird to me because he's like, oh, you two just aren't right for each other. But you loved Ivy and you were in love with Ivy, but you're also in love with Grace, right? So this goes back to this goes back to what I have been saying about like with the Sam and Ivy and Grace thing, which is that you can love two people, right? And I just feel like they subscribe to this. There's only one, you can only have one true love, kind of way of thinking. And because of that, that's why Sam's saying you two aren't right for each other, because he believes that Charity is Miguel's one true love. I guess that's the only thing I can think of. But I was very annoyed when he was like, I just can't imagine it. You two just aren't right for each other. Based on what? Okay, whatever. So meanwhile, over at Tabitha's house, Zombie Charity is like celebrating all of her accomplishments with Martinis, and Timmy and Tabitha try to slip out of the house because they're like, well, she's horrible when she's sober. Imagine what she's going to be like if she gets a bunch of Martinis in her, right? So they want to get out of there because they're worried that she will maybe hurt them, I guess. But Zombie Charity kind of catches them trying to leave, and she pressures Tabitha to drink with her. So Tabitha sits down to drink with her, and Tabitha then tells her a story about being burned at the stake in her past and how she was sentenced by the Cranes. And since then, and when that happened, she cursed all of them, cursed the Cranes. When she came back to life, she cursed them. And she says they haven't had a nice day since. So that harkens back to what Theresa and Pilar were talking about with the Cranes have lots of money and wealth, but they experience constant tragedy. And I think we're meant to believe that is because of Tabitha's curse on the Cranes, which I love. I love that there's a little crossover there. So, then the zombie turns into Julian, which was funny. She turns into Julian and they kind of like laugh together. And she's looking out the window and she sees, Zombie Charity sees Miguel and Kay outside, and she makes a comment on how hot Miguel is. That Miguel, and it's in Julian's body, so it's just like, that hot Miguel he's quite the hunk, isn't he? Like while she drinks her drink like Julian, it was great. It was funny. And so she's lusting after Miguel all of a sudden now. It says that he's one hottie hot hottie. So then the zombie notices that Timmy isn't anywhere around, and Tabitha like lets it slip that he's probably off somewhere trying to free Charity, which I don't know why she would let that come out of her mouth. Maybe it's because she's gotten a little tipsy while everybody in the witch's house getting tipsy. Everybody in the witch's house getting tipsy. I need to not do these by myself. Everybody at Tabitha's house getting tipsy. I need to make this work. I could just say, everybody in the house getting tipsy. Everybody in the house getting tipsy. Tabitha's tipsy, so maybe that's why she let it slip. So Zombie then goes looking for Timmy, and she says, he better not have gone near that magic scroll. So she is going to go after Timmy and says, he better not have opened that magic scroll. And so she goes off to find him. But before she can find him, she gets a feeling, and she's like, I have to go. And the feeling is that Theresa is weakening, right? And she's not going to go through with their plan. So she's like, I have to go give Theresa a push. Then Timmy is upstairs with the magic scroll, and it projects a hologram of Charity, the real Charity, in her little ice block, but she's melted. She can speak to Timmy. Well, she's not speaking to Timmy. She's speaking, and Timmy can see and hear her. And I think she can feel somebody's presence, but she can't see them. She can't hear them. She doesn't know who it is. And honestly, this exchange was it was actually pretty funny because Timmy would say one thing, and then Charity would say that exact same thing, and it was pretty funny. But what Charity says to Timmy is that the only way to rescue. So she's calling out for somebody to help her. She's like, whoever that is, whoever's out there, I'm trapped. I need help. Please save me. The only way to save me is the Book of Spells. She knows that the Book of Spells can save her. So this is when Tabitha finds Timmy and warns him not to play around with the scroll anymore because the zombie is going to kill them. She's like, that zombie will kill you if she catches you doing this. So Timmy tells Tabitha, okay, but then he immediately goes behind her back and opens the scroll again and projects hologram Charity out again. And he says, Timmy's got to do what Timmy's got to do. And so we get hologram Charity again saying, please rescue me before it's too late. And then she again says the only way to save her is the Book of Spells. And Timmy is wondering, like, what can Timmy do to free Charity? How can I get my hand on the books? Or how can I get my hands on the book? And what spell would free Charity? So this is when zombie Charity, she's gone. She gave the push. She comes back, right? And she comes back. She's like, I'm in the mood for more Martinis. And so she talks to Tabitha. They make a picture of Martinis without Timmy. She like magics them. And she then tells Tabitha she has this plan to sleep with Miguel. She's like, that Miguel is looking really hot these days. He's pretty easy on the eyes. I think I'll have my way with him. And then Tabitha says, a mortal can't have sex with a spawn of hell. The evil will kill him. I love that too for a episode title. A mortal can't have sin with the spawn of hell. The evil will kill him. It might be a little long, but so we learned something new. If zombie Charity succeeds in seducing Miguel and having sex with him, he will die. That is what we have learned. Oh my goodness. I was like, okay, that's an interesting new piece of the puzzle. And I'm interested to see how this plays out. So zombie Charity is like, well, that Miguel, he's one studly stud, all right. And I'm going to put the moves on him. And she's like, and him dying isn't a problem because we want him dead anyway. I mean, Tabitha has been trying to kill Miguel for a while now, right? She basically gave up on it, but that was her original plan was to kill Charity. But once she couldn't really get to Charity, she decided to try and kill Miguel because as long as Miguel is dead, then they can't have sex and Charity can't come into her full powers, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess Tabitha's a witch. It says a mortal can't have sex with the spawn of hell. The evil will kill him. But we know Tabitha has had like lots of sex with mortals. But I guess she's not the same as zombie Charity. I don't know what her, like, are you born a witch or do you become one? Are people born wicked or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? If you know what that is, that's from Wicked. But yeah, like, are you born a witch or, I guess because Endora is born a witch. So yeah, I guess you're just born a witch. That stands the question now. Are Grace, Faith, Charity, Kay, and Jessica, are they witches? Are they witches, or like, are there good witches and bad witches? And Tabitha's just a bad witch and Charity's a good witch? These are questions that I would like to have answered if you have answers to them. I'm going to go on. So the zombie is plotting to sleep with Miguel, and Tabitha makes a point of saying, are you sure you want to do that? Because do you really want to cross Kay? Like, I know you think she might not be much, but she is a Standish woman and has access to at least some of the Standish powers, which also, why would Kay only have some of the Standish powers and Charity would have all of the Standish powers? They both have the same amount of Standish blood. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But she says she at least has some of the Standish powers. And Kay might be a force to be reckoned with, especially if you're trying to fuck Miguel, right? Like, look at what she did to Charity. And that's her blood cousin, somebody who didn't do anything to her. Like, look, what do you think if she had the power, what do you think she would do to you? She would absolutely destroy you, right? But the zombie says, there's nothing that Kay can do to me. There's nothing she can do. This zombie is very arrogant. She's very arrogant, and I think that's going to be her downfall. I don't know, because I honestly do not remember this storyline very much. I remember some of it, but I don't remember how we get rid of this zombie. So I do think that Kay will likely be, I hope Kay is going to be her undoing. I really do, especially the way she's been treating her recently, especially in these episodes. So then she says to Tabitha, she can't do anything to me. She's just a human. I'm not worried. And she says, I got a hot date. And she goes off to, like, go flirt with Miguel some, I guess. And so, well, not I guess. I have the next note. So zombie Charity goes back over to the Bennett home where Kay is still in the middle of that conversation she was having with her parents, right? And the zombie shows up and Kay looks at the zombie and says, please tell my parents that you're not interested in having a birthday party, especially if it means getting back together with Miguel. And Kay is shocked to hear the zombie say, oh, a birthday party? That would be wonderful. I would love that. She's like, what do you mean you would love that? Because remember, Kay is under the impression that the zombie has to do whatever she tells it to do, but that is not true anymore. That is not, it is, the zombie has officially gone rogue. We got a rogue zombie on our hands, people. Hide your kids, hide your wife. Because they zombieing everybody out here. She is, she has a mind of her own, right? And she's going to do what she's going to do. So, the zombie has thrown Kay a curveball by saying she would love to have a birthday party. And then after that, Grace kind of pulls Kay to the side and decides to just sprinkle a little more salt in the wound and tells her, you have to do what's right and give Miguel and Charity a chance. Like, I know they've been going through a tough time, but you need to do what's right and make sure that they have a chance. I mean, ultimately that's up to Miguel, right? Like, ultimately it's up to Miguel whether they have a chance or not, whether Kay has a chance with Miguel, right? So I don't know. I didn't love the way Grace was talking to Kay at all. But it is what it is. Kay then confronts the zombie, Charity, and figures out that the zombie is planning to sleep with Miguel. And she tells her, you can't do that. And the zombie says, yes, I can, I will, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's when Miguel comes in and Charity tells him about the party and how she's looking forward to the party and everything that comes along with it. Very kind of innuendo. There was a lot of innuendo there, right? Like, it was implied you and I are going to get it on that night, right? And she then kisses him very, very passionately, like full tongue, open mouth, right? Kay is visibly ill. She's sick. I hate this for my girl. I do, but she did it to herself, right? Like, this is a hell of her own making, unfortunately. So the next day, all the kids come over to the Bennett house and they're going to be helping Grace to plan for Charity's party, right? And Kate comes in and she's like, did you all really believe her when she said she wanted a party? I can't believe y'all are taking her seriously. I mean, after the way she's been acting for weeks, I'm sure she doesn't really want a party. Who's to say she won't change her mind again? And the kids, so I feel like Simone was very much with Kay a little bit, yeah, she has been really mean lately. But Grace particularly is I wouldn't call what Charity's been doing these few weeks mean. Distant maybe, but I wouldn't call her behavior mean. What do you mean? Wait, you wouldn't call it mean? You wouldn't call it mean to tell Miguel that he's stupid, and also that he's boring, and also that she doesn't want anything to do with him, like in the most vicious terms possible. And you wouldn't think that, you don't think it's mean to send people on like a wild goose chase. Because remember, she said that there was a moment when everybody was like looking for Charity, right? And she was like hiding in that tree. We did the whole thing with the puddle or whatever. And she said that she was like throwing her voice, and it was like all a practical joke. But the practical joke was making them think that she was in serious danger. You don't think that's mean? That's definitely mean, Grace. Come on. I just hate the fact that Grace won't be honest about how Charity has been acting. Like it's like Charity can do no wrong. My own kid is bad, and I can only assume that she's up to no good. But Charity, there's no way she could possibly. I can't even say what she's doing is mean. You can't even say that what she's doing is mean. And that's like the basic thing to say about her behavior recently. It has been very mean. It has been very, very mean. And maybe she hasn't been mean to you, but you've seen her be mean to everybody. She punched Kay in the face. Now Grace doesn't know that. Grace doesn't know that she punched Kay in the face, but she punched her in the face. Come on. So anyway, Grace takes issue with Kay saying that her behavior has been mean. And Kay says to her mother, call it whatever you want, but I don't want to see her hurt Miguel again. She has hurt him a bunch recently, and I just don't want that to happen again. And then Miguel kind of speaks up for himself and is like, I get what you're saying, Kay, and I appreciate you. You're a good friend, but I'm okay. And don't worry about me. I can take care of myself. I'm just happy that we have the real Charity back, right? So then Grace makes makes a little speech to everybody saying, I love Charity like my own. Kay, under her breath, says more than your own. Yeah, it does feel like that. I'm not going to lie. It does feel like Charity gets a lot more attention from Grace, and it just seems like she's more willing to give Charity the benefit of the doubt than she is to Kay. And I don't care for that. I don't like that. So Grace says, I love Charity like my own, and I made a promise after her mom died that I would do everything to make her feel like family, and that's why this party is so, so important. And so then the whole group has a look, and at this moment they're all wondering where Charity is too. Like everybody's like, where's Charity? I wonder where she is, And so that also kind of lends itself to Charity still acting strange. She's like MIA. Where the fuck is she? We're planning our party and she should be here helping, right? But she's just like off doing whatever. But they're having conversation around Charity and why she's been acting the way she's been acting. And Jessica says that dumbass theory that Miguel came up with, which was that it was because of her premonitions, and she was just pushing them away, specifically Miguel, pushing Miguel away because she had that premonition about him being in love with Kay. So they have that whole conversation, and they're like, we're just glad that Charity is getting back to her normal self. And John is like, yeah, I remember John, y'all. John is the long lost son John is the long lost son, right? And John's like, yeah, I would love to meet the Charity y'all been talking about, because the one I met was weird. The one I met was odd, right? And then he just talks about like, oh, it's so crazy to be in a big family like this all of a sudden after going from being an only child. Shut up. What are you doing here? Sit down. Just sit down. You just shut up, John. And so later on, Zombie Charity comes in to the kitchen. She finally shows up. She apologizes to everybody about the way she's been acting lately. She says it is because of her premonitions, but she's ready to get back to her old self. They have some conversation around dancing and DJ, hiring a DJ, because Charity, Simone first asks Grace if they can hire Chad to be the DJ. And of course, Grace is like, I don't know. Your parents don't really want Chad around you two. And then Zombie Charity is like, oh, please, I really want him to be the DJ. I really want him to be there. Can you please talk to them about it and like please try to make that happen, right? So it looks like Chad's going to be our DJ. And so this is when Kay pulls Zombie Charity aside and is like, we need to work on invitations. Charity tries to blow her off, but Kay will not be going anywhere. She's like, no, you and I need to talk, right? So she pulls her aside to have a conversation, and she just tells her to stop hitting on Miguel. And she tells her, you can't sleep with him. Under no circumstances can you sleep with Miguel. And Zombie Charity says, how are you gonna stop me? You gonna tell everybody the truth? Didn't think so, basically. And she says, I can do whatever I want. That includes having sex with Hunky Miguel. And so then Zombie Charity goes and catches up with Miguel, and they're like, I think they're sitting on the porch, on like a porch swing, and talking to each other, having a little conversation. And Zombie apologizes to Miguel for being awful to him. She says, I'm so sorry. I've been so awful to you lately. I think the reason is because, you know, I was having those premonitions about you being in love with Kay. And he stops her and he's like, yeah, I know, but I don't love Kay. I love you. I could never love Kay. Oh, poor Kay. Poor Kay. Because she's standing there watching all of this, right? And he says, you know, I love you, not Kay. And then she tells him that she loves him too. And he's like, you know, I'm just so glad to finally hear you say that again. I was really worried about us for a little bit there, but I'm so glad I'm just happy to have you back. And then she tells him, you know, yeah, I love you. And I want to show you how committed I am to our future together. Meaning, you know, and then she says, I can't wait to make love to you. And then she kisses him. And yeah, Kay, like I said, Kay's watching all of this. Sadly, I feel bad for Kay. I know she made this happen. Like, this is all her fault, honestly, but I feel bad for the girl. I'm on her side. I don't like regular Charity, and Zombie Charity, while she's interesting to watch and like more interesting of a character than regular Charity is, I don't like her either. Like, she's like so shitty and mean and nasty and horrible. Especially considering Kay brought you here. I brought you in this world. I could take you out, and I really hope that is the premise. Like, that is where we're headed with this, that Kay is the one who has to destroy Zombie Charity. I think it's gonna be Timmy though. Like, they're making it real like heavy handed with our buddy Tim. I think it might be Timmy, but I really kind of wanted it to be Kay. I just would enjoy watching that, seeing her cast a spell to get rid of that zombie who's so smug and like, you can't do anything to me, you're just a human, right? So they all go back into the house, and Miguel and Charity announced to everybody that they're officially back together, and everybody's so excited and so happy, with the exception of Kay, of course. Meanwhile, in this Bennett home, because Tabitha's there, like, kind of, you know, spying, creeping, as she always is, right? So, of course, if Tabitha's there, Timmy's there. Timmy is in the living room while everybody else is in the kitchen, and Timmy hears somebody calling out his name. Timmy. And then we see that it's Faith, Grace's long-lost twin sister. Faith in the fireplace. And so she's like a fire figure in the fireplace, and she tells him, you can help me save my daughter Charity and Miguel before it's too late for everyone. Apparently she says, I need you to help me save Charity and Miguel before it's too late for all of us, right? For everybody. And so Faith tells him he's strong enough to save Charity because he and Charity, well, that they don't share a special love. Faith tells Timmy that he's strong enough to save Charity because of his special love for Charity. And she says, you know, love will always win out over evil. And if you love Charity, you will be able to save her. I was like, okay, how does this help? Because Timmy's like, okay, I want to save her. How? What can I do? And for a while, she's just like, you have to use your love for Charity. In what way and capacity? That would be useful information for me, Faith. Please, baby, please give me something. So he's having like this conversation with Faith. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Grace gets like this weird feeling. She's like, I think I sense Faith's presence. And she's like, it feels like she's trying to warn us about something. And it's like, why wouldn't Faith appear to Grace? Why would she appear to Timmy and not Grace? I don't, whatever. Grace is having a feeling. Meanwhile, Timmy is having a full-on conversation with Faith. Whatever. So Grace is getting this feeling and says that it feels like maybe Faith is trying to warn us about something. And then she goes over to Charity and is like, are you getting a feeling? Do you feel that? Do you feel your mother's presence? And Zombie Charity is like, no, I don't feel anything at all. Maybe your mind is just playing tricks on you. You know, sometimes our premonitions are just off. I think maybe you're just having an off day. Like, my mom's dead. She says that. And then, like, weirdly, it was so weird. She just looks at Grace with like nothing in her eyes, and she's like, Miguel needs more tomato soup cake. You should serve him some more tomato soup cake. You should serve everyone some more tomato soup cake. And at first I thought that the zombie was like hypnotizing Grace, but no, that's not what was happening. But that's what it seemed like. She was like staring into her eyes with a very blank expression and was like, you should serve everyone more tomato soup cake. Everybody needs more tomato soup cake. It seemed like she was trying to hypnotize her, but she wasn't. But Grace did listen to her and go serve the cake instead of listening to her, like, this feeling that she's having. So then the zombie kind of jumps into action, right? Because she realizes, okay, oh shit, Faith is around here somewhere. I need to figure out what's going on and nip this in the bud before any of these people get hip to what's going on. And so the zombie tells Tabitha to find Timmy. She's like, whatever this is, I'm sure Timmy has something to do with it. I need you to go check and see if I'm right. Like, find Timmy, make sure he's not like fucking something up right now. And so when she sends Tabitha in to find Timmy, Tabitha finds Timmy talking to Faith in the fire. And so Tabitha pulls him away and it's like, don't listen to her. And then Faith is like, you're the murderess who killed me. And then she jumps out of the fire. She herself is like made of flames, but she jumps out of the fire and she attacks Tabitha and is like choking her, and they're fighting with each other. And while they're fighting, Tabitha grabs like a fire poker and like swings it through her and tries to like defeat her that way. Faith eventually retreats back into the fire and just tells Timmy that he has to be the one to save Charity, and that he has to find the book of spells and cast one of the spells to save Charity. So at least she did finally give him some information on what he can do. And it's like, there's some actionable points here. I can find the book of spells. It'd be nice if you knew which spell I needed, but okay, find the book of spells and then find the correct spell to save Charity. So Tabitha starts like poking at the fire, trying to get rid of Faith. And she's like, back, get out of here, back. It is at this moment that, well, actually I'm skipping ahead, because at one point zombie Charity tells Kay, keep your mother from going into the living room until I can figure out what's going on. So keep her busy. So Kay and Grace have a conversation, and Kay pulls Grace to the side and she tells her, I am in love with Miguel and it's tearing me apart. I mean, and this is the truth. This is the truth that she's telling her mother, right? And she's really bearing her emotions and her soul to her mom. Grace like rolls her eyes, and it's crazy. She doesn't do it to her face. What happens is Kay says, I am in love with Miguel. It's tearing me apart. And she's facing one way and Grace is standing behind her. And Grace like rolls her eyes when she says this and like lets out like a big sigh, like she's exasperated with her own kid who's telling her, who's experiencing love for the first time, right? And like the love with somebody whom she has known her whole life. And so there's no telling how long she's like been in love with him, right? But Grace doesn't see it that way because she's a horrible, horrible mother. She's a horrible mother. I can't say Grace is the worst mother in town. And I think we've had debates about who is the worst mom. I mean, obviously the worst of the worst is like Edna Wallace, which we haven't gotten her yet. But of like our main crew of the mothers, Ivy, Rebecca, Pilar, Grace, is that everybody? Eve. I think there's just like basically those 5. Believe it or not, in my opinion, Rebecca is the most attentive to her kid, right? Like Rebecca, if we're using that metric, like who's the most attentive to their child, it's Rebecca, and that would make her like the best mother. And Grace is one of the worst. I think Eve falls underneath Grace. Well, no. Because at least Eve is like having conversations with her daughters and like does want the best for them. And I get where Eve is coming from. Do I agree with like a lot of the things that she says? And no, but she is trying to have like honest communication with her daughters, right? And trying to listen to them. And she is listening to them, right? And hearing them. She just disagrees with what they're saying. Grace is like, she's not even hearing her own kids say like, I'm in love with Miguel. And like, you don't even have a problem with Miguel. Like Eve has an issue with Chad, right? Whether it's right or wrong, that's not for me to litigate right now. What I'm talking about is Grace has no problem with Miguel. In fact, she probably really, really deeply cares for Miguel. So for your kid, when your kid's telling you, I'm in love with this really great guy, they're 16, let her be in love with him. Let her have a crush, right? That's not what Grace does. No, that's not what Grace does, because she is a horrible mother. So like I said, Kay says, I'm in love with Miguel. It's tearing me apart. Grace rolls her eyes, lets out an exasperated sigh, and tells Kay, you're not experiencing true love. It's just infatuation. Like I'm sure it, does hurt to see the person that you really care for. Like she was very clear about her language, right? She refused to say the word love, like in relationship to Miguel and Kay. She's like, you really care for Miguel. And I'm sure it's hard to see the person that you really care deeply for with someone else. But you don't love him. And what you're experiencing is not true love. It's just infatuation. And then she blows her off entirely. She says to her, she's like, we can talk about this later, but right now I really need to figure out why I'm having this feeling. Girl, you always having feelings. What are you talking? You're always having some kind of weird feeling, and your kid is like bearing all to you and needs you right now. Sure, we know that this is some kind of plot and ploy, right? But Grace doesn't know that. And it's very telling to me how she responds to her own daughter when her daughter is being truthful and honest with her. Like, Kay is being honest with her right now and saying, I'm in love with Miguel. It's tearing me apart. It's tearing me apart. I'm in love with Miguel, right? She's in love with Miguel. It's tearing her apart inside. And she's experiencing these like big, huge emotions for the first time. And I just think a mother should be more understanding and more gentle with their own child. Grace sucks. God, she sucks. Okay, so she then makes her way to the living room. Everybody follows her to the living room because she's like, I know there's something going on. Like, I need to get to the bottom of this feeling. So everybody goes into the living room. And when they get there, they just find Tabitha poking at the fire saying, back, back, back. Ross, or Reese, whatever you want to call him, Reese interrogates Tabitha about what she's doing. He's like, what were you doing? Something witchy, no doubt, right? And she's like, oh, I was just pushing back an unruly log that was falling out of the fire. I didn't want this beautiful new house to catch fire. There was a log that was kind of on the edge, and I didn't want it to be a fire. It was a fire hazard. And so she says that's what she was doing. Whatever. As y'all know, Reese always basically kind of is right, but nobody believes it. So it doesn't matter. Nothing will ever, ever, ever come of anything that Reese brings up. That is his lot in life. It's his cross to bear, right? That nobody will ever listen to him when it comes to Tabitha, or believe him when it comes to Tabitha. So at this point, Timmy has like slipped out to go and find the book of spells and to try and cast one of the spells, trying to find a spell to cast to like get rid of zombie Charity and bring back and save regular Charity, right? So zombie Charity notices that Timmy's gone. She goes to find him. She's like, he's up to something. I gotta go find him. And so when she catches up to him, he is in the middle of trying to cast the spell. And so Tabitha kind of catches up with Zombie, sees her about to basically do harm to Timmy because she's angry with him, right? And Tabitha stops her from hurting Timmy and says, if you want to hurt this boy, you're gonna have to go through me. I was like, okay. Timmy was like, oh, Tabitha really does love Timmy. And she's like, yes, I've been telling you that. She's like, yeah, you're much more than just a doll come to life to me. And so Tabitha says, you need both of us to continue being your little pawns, right? Like, you need both of us as she calls themselves indentured servants. She's like, you need us as your indentured servants so that you can carry out your plan. So you can't hurt Timmy, and you certainly can't hurt me, right? So Zombie relents, is like, fine. And she tells Tabitha, hide this book somewhere where Timmy can't find it. Tabitha's like, don't worry, I'll hide it so well he'll never be able to find it. I'm going to hide it somewhere where Timmy will never even think to look. Timmy finds it immediately. Timmy finds it immediately. Timmy thinks, he's walking around downstairs. He's like, where would Tabitha hide a book where Timmy would never look for it? And then he says, of course, she would hide it in plain sight. He finds it on the bookshelf immediately. I mean, it was the worst hiding place in history. In the history of hiding places, it was the worst possible hiding place. And so he finds that book of spells and looks through it and is trying to find a spell to free Charity. Meanwhile, Zombie Tabitha and Charity start to argue again, and Tabitha like wants to physically fight. She's like, put him up. And that's not hyperbole. She literally is like holding up her fists and circling around Zombie Charity and telling her like, come on, I can beat you. Like, I'm gonna beat you the old fashioned way, right? And it was funny. It wasn't serious at all. Cause then the Zombie Charity just strikes her with some lightning, right? Like, girl, I don't know what you thought you were doing. And then Tabitha, the zombie like goes off to do some more like evil, nefarious things. Tabitha then finds Timmy with the book again and is like, oh my God, Timmy, she's gonna fucking kill us. What don't you understand about this? That zombie is going to kill you, and then she's gonna kill me if you don't stop fucking around with this book. And that's when Timmy's like, well, I'm just looking for a spell to destroy Zombie Charity. And Tabitha explains that if they destroy the zombie, then that will destroy real Charity too, as they share the same life force. So that's new information for us. We didn't know that. That's new information. And I kind of like it. I like the idea that these two people these two entities are linked, which makes sense, right? That they would be sharing the same life force. She's basically a clone of Charity, an evil clone. Okay, so later on, Grace is in the living room, and she also hears a name calling her voice. Of course, we believe it's Faith, right? Calling out to Grace. So good. We didn't see it in these episodes, but hopefully we'll see her reveal herself to Grace in these episodes, in the next week's episodes. And honestly, that's pretty much where we ended this week. Kay has decided she has had enough of zombie charity, and like at the very end of these episodes, she wants to find a way to get rid of the zombie, right? So she goes over to Tabitha's house and she finds that book of spells just like laying around, and she's like, this is perfect, exactly what I was looking for. So we'll see more of what happens with that next week, hopefully. And so now we're almost done. I only have 1 page of notes left. And so let's talk about the first thing. First thing is, it was interesting this week. I thought we were going to have more troubled marriages stuff than we have, because we pick up in the week around like the 2nd or 3rd episode, and it's Eve and TC having a conversation about Julian's murder. And they talk about how they need to talk about it, and that, it's the idea of what may have happened is eating them both up inside. And so they need to talk about it, right? That's basically what Eve says to TC. TC responds to Eve by saying, yes, we do need to talk about our part in Julian's murder. And then he says, I know what my motive would be, right? You know what I have a very clear motive for wanting to kill Julian, and everybody knows I wanted him dead, right? But you don't really have a motive. And this wasn't like he was accusing her of anything. It really was just like him saying, like, they can't get you on this, babe. Like, you don't have any reason. You haven't been wrapped up with the Cranes in any way. There's no reason for them to believe that you had any real motive for killing Julian other than because you were upset for me, right? And so he's like, you don't have to worry about them getting me for Julian's murder. There's no proof that I did anything to Julian, and there's nothing to prove that you had any reason to want to kill Julian at all. So we're in the clear, basically. That's like the conversation they have. It's not really much of a conversation. It's TC talking at Eve, but that's really all. I thought there was going to be more to this week, but there wasn't. So let's talk about what's going on with Sam and the murder investigation. Again, it's just a little bit. Sam's thinking about like the Julian murder case, like looking at the case file and the investigation. And he tells Grace, he feels a little uneasy because it's likely that the person who murdered Julian is someone that they know. And not only is it probably somebody they know, it's somebody that they've probably had in their home and somebody they care about, right? And then we get the craziest fucking montage with the craziest song. And I'm going to cut that in right now.
Thinking of Julian's murder investigation, I just can't shake it.
It's really eating at you, isn't it?
Somewhere out there, a killer's going to bed, hoping that they got away with murder. And what really tears me up is it's probably someone we know. Maybe even a friend of ours. Someone we may have had in our home. Did the fever come to find you?
the simple pleasures? Or is this what you call fun? Does your finger pull the trigger? Or is your heart the one? Everyone's a stranger. Bullet in the chamber. Loaded gun. What have you become? A bad moon rose up on your mother's son. Now you're a loaded gun. Loaded gun. Loaded gun. What have you become? A bad moon rose up on your mother's son. Now you're a loaded gun. Loaded gun. Loaded gun. Now you're a loaded gun.
So yeah, that happened. If you, I don't know how I'm gonna edit this, if I'm gonna put the whole thing in or not. But yeah, if you're not watching the podcast, that was a nice little musical break for you. If you are watching the podcast, I hope you really enjoyed that montage as much as I did. I thought it was so dramatic, so I don't know, it just was hilarious, and they hit every single point. I don't understand why Sheridan was in it, and for so long they lingered on her for so long. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. I feel like it was a fun little something to put in, and I think this episode might be a little short today. Not sure, so I thought I might add that in. So we'll see how it all washes out in the edit, right? So anyway, we get that crazy montage, and then the next day, Sam and Luis are investigating this murder right at the police station. And which Luis should not even be on this case. We've talked about this at length already, but he himself is a suspect. How the fuck is he supposed to investigate himself, right? Not only is he a suspect, his mom and his sister are also both suspects. He should not be able to work on this case. Honestly, Sam really shouldn't, considering TC is his best friend too. Like, there's a clear conflict of interest, but whatever. This cracked me up. They're quotes working on this case, talking about, oh, maybe we'll understand more once we get all the statements. Again, I will reiterate, it's been months since Julian died. It's been months. Y'all haven't gotten the statements from the suspects yet? It's like the first thing you do. But anyway, they're talking about, we can't figure it out. Who could it be? Who could it be now? And Luis says, we're wasting our time. Why don't we just close this case? We shouldn't even be doing this anyway. Nobody even cares. Who gives a fuck? He's dead. Who cares if he's who killed him, right? And Luis finally is like, you know what we should just do? We should just close this case. We should close the investigation. He's dead. Who cares who murdered him? That's what he says. Who cares who murdered Julian? Whoever did it did us all a favor. And while Sam agrees, he gets really angry, right? He gets so mad at Luis. And he yells at him and saying, we're cops, we're police officers, we're supposed to be upholding the law. And he says, if you're not into doing this investigation 100%, then I suggest you turn in your badge right now. And that's the end of that. Luis goes on to, I guess he buckles or whatever. I mean, Sam's not wrong. Except, Sam, you shouldn't even have Luis on this case. What are you doing? You shouldn't be on this case. But whatever. So last and certainly least, that's all for troubled marriages and Julian murder case. Last and most certainly least, we got to talk about Sheridan and Louise and what's going on. I'm going to blaze through this. Listen to me. I'm going to zoom like a Mazda, okay? Right through this. Brian and Diana, they kiss on the beach and then they go to clean up the room that they were painting, okay? So they have a kiss. They go back to the room because they were painting a room for Liz. And then some music comes on. They do a tango. Of course they do a tango because Brian was like, oh, I know how to tango. My mama taught me how to tango when I was a boy, and I have a special move that she taught me. And so they dance, and Diana's like, oh, I wonder how I know how to dance. How did I learn how to dance? And how could I possibly know that special? Like he does his special move. The move is like a spin and a dip. Like it's not a special move at all. It's actually one of the most basic moves in all of ballroom. But after they finish their dance, Sheridan or Diana, because we are calling this lady Diana. This lady is not Sheridan. I refuse. This lady is Diana. Diana is like, wow, I wonder how I learned to dance. I guess that's one thing I know how to do. But how could I have known your special step? The special step that only your mother taught me. And he's like, I don't know, girl. It's probably a fluke. And I honestly, this is the one and only time I'm going to agree with Brian. It wasn't that special of a step. It's a fluke. And honestly, if you're dancing, for anybody who's ever taken ballroom, if you're dancing with somebody and y'all doing like basic steps and you have a partner who is leading, they should be able to lead you into the step, right? You should kind of be able to gauge what the next move is kind of going to be. So it's really not that crazy, but she's like, no, how could I possibly have known that? He says it's probably a fluke. The only other person who knows it or that my mother taught it to is my brother. And she's like, oh, your brother? I just got the strangest feeling when you said something about your brother. It's weird because it's not the first time he's brought up his brother, right? We've talked about him. He's talked about his brother at length at this point. But all of a sudden he says something about having a brother and she's like, oh, that really like gave me I got a weird feeling when you said the words your brother. And then Antonio's like, whoa, wait a minute. Or Brian, we call him Brian. He's like, wait a minute. Don't go thinking that my brother is your dead lover. There's no way that he's your dead lover. One, because he's very much alive. And Diana says, are you sure? I mean, I'm pretty sure. Are you sure? Yeah, we literally just talked to him, right? Like you were there. Like you didn't meet him, but you heard me talking about my brother. But anyway, she's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. And second of all, I know my brother isn't your dead lover because if you were his lover, he would never give up looking for you. He would search to the ends of the earth to look for you. And then he talks about how his brother's a really good guy and that the trouble between them is his fault, Brian's fault, and not his brother's fault, Luis's fault. And then he talks about like his mother and his family and all of his memories. And then Diana asks, are you and your brother anything alike? And Antonio responds with, no, we're nothing alike. My brother's more the Latin part of the family and I'm more the Black Irish. That's not how it works at all. Y'all are both the exact same amount of Latin and Black Irish. Y'all are both the same. Y'all have the same mama, same daddy, same DNA, the same DNA breakdown. But whatever. He's more the Latin side. I'm more the Black Irish side. Oh, okay. It just felt weird. It was a weird thing to say. And like, what does that mean? What are you trying to infer by saying like, he's more of the Latin side. I'm more of the Black Irish side. What are you trying to infer there? I don't know. If y'all know, please let me know. So anyway, then there's like conversation, like she keeps like asking him kind of questions about his brother. And Brian is like, why are you asking me so much about my brother? I'm not going to introduce you to him because he would be competition for me. And he's like joking kind of, but it does seem like he's like, no, you don't need to know anything about my brother because I don't need the competition basically. So the next day, Diana is back working at the restaurant. Liz and Brian are like tending bar. Doc is there. Everybody's there. The restaurant's hopping. And it seems that Brian's lessons, because remember he was teaching her how to waitress yesterday, have worked and she's doing a great job. She's figured it out. She has figured out how to walk and carry a tray without dropping anything. Applause. Let me get my applause. She has figured out how to walk and with a tray without dropping anything. And so Liz is happy and they're talking about how great she's doing. And then out of nowhere, the cook comes out of the kitchen. It's like, Liz, I think there's a gas leak in the kitchen. And Brian's like, oh no, Diana just went back there. And immediately he's like going to go get her. But then there's an explosion. Why are they always blowing this woman up? They're always blowing her up. It's so annoying. she was in the kitchen. And of course an explosion happens while Diana's in the kitchen. So Antonio or Brian, whatever you want to call him, rushes in to save her. He's like, I have to save her. He rushes in, he grabs her, he carries her out. She's unconscious. She's not breathing. Doc gives her CPR, and she comes back to life. Everything is fine. They don't take her to a hospital. Doc doesn't even really examine her. She and Brian go for a walk on the beach. Whatever. They go out for a walk together. That's all that really happens with them. Meanwhile, back in Harmony, Luis is pining for Sheridan. What else is new, right? Same old. He then meets up with Beth because they were supposed to be going on a date. They go out to dinner at the Lobster Shack, baby. Lobster Shack, baby, Lobster Shack. They go out to dinner at the Lobster Shack. We haven't seen it in a while. I was kind of excited to see it. But before they get to dinner, before we kind of sit down with them, we see Hank. He shows up to the Lobster Shack first, and he starts chatting up this random woman at the bar, and is like being flirty with her, trying to pick her up, right? And then she's like, I don't typically date handsome, smooth talking men, something like that, right? And he's like, oh, you wound me because honestly, I'm really a sensitive guy, a lonely guy, and then he proceeds to tell this woman all of Luis's business. He tells her all about how Luis was in love with a woman, but she died, and now he's trying to get him back together with his ex-girlfriend, who they were really good together. He tells her everything, and she eventually relents and is like, oh, you know what? You do seem like a really nice guy. I'll have dinner with you. So then they meet up with Luis and Beth at the table, and this girl basically tells them like, yeah, he and I just met, and he was telling me all about his friend whom he's trying to help, who, his girlfriend, fiance died, and, and so they get quiet, right? And she realizes, oh, I've stepped in it. He was talking about y'all, right? And then they like sit down for dinner and have dinner together. That's basically what happens. But at dinner, first, Beth, it's time to order, and Beth is like, oh, I'll just have the chicken. And Luis is like, the chicken? We're at the Lobster Shack. You're going to have lobster. He's like, why would you have chicken? You should have seafood at least, right? And she's like, no, it's too extravagant. It's too expensive. Girl, frankly, if I was Luis, I would be a little bit offended if you really think I can't handle a $50, $60 dinner for the two of us. It's because I imagine the Lobster Shack is comparably priced to like Red Lobster, right? You get 2 lobsters at Red Lobster and like a couple of sides or whatever. It's going to cost you about $60. A couple of drinks, $60, right? Like you can swing that, maybe $75. It's not that much money. And so I would be a little offended if I was Luis. Is like, dang, is that what you think of me? Like, you think I'm like destitute, in poverty, that you have to get the $8 chicken instead of the, $20 lobster? But anyway, he insists that she gets the lobster. He's like, we're celebrating tonight. I don't know what they're celebrating, but maybe I guess they're celebrating being together on a date or something. I don't know. So everybody ends up getting lobsters. When the server takes their order, he's like, okay, so that's 4 lobsters all around. And just know that we're doing a promotion tonight. Whoever gets the special lobster wins an all expenses paid trip to Bermuda for 2. Well, y'all already know where this is going. Luis and Beth, either Luis or Beth are probably going to win this trip. Unless Hank wins the trip and gives it to them. That might happen. I don't see that new girl giving away her trip. So, but we know Luis is on his way back to Bermuda. So somehow, some way, he's going to go back to Bermuda and keep missing Sheridan over and over again. I already hate it. I'm already mad about it. I'm gonna just say that. Meanwhile, on the island, Liz gets a call from one of her customers who wants Brian to sail the customer's boat back to Bermuda. And Liz is like excited, hoping that Brian will take her to Bermuda with him. Like, girl, why would you think he's going to take you? Obviously, he's going to take Sheridan. Obviously, he's going to take Diana, right? But whatever. They're going to all end up on Bermuda together, obviously. So that's the show. That's the end. That's all she wrote. I'll see y'all again next week. I'm going to see if I can get somebody short notice to at least sit on the podcast with me for this coming one. Because like I said, I'm doing them like back to back. Like I'm doing this one. I'm recording this on Saturday. I'm planning to record another one on Monday. Right. So like on Monday night. So the turnaround is like crazy. And if you want to know why I'm doing that, ask me and I'll tell you. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can maybe get somebody else. Maybe I'll ask Naya to like sit on and I'll talk at her. I don't know. So that's the podcast. Remember, you can always catch me on on all the social media. Check the link in the description. And with that, you are my passion for life.
Loaded gun. What have you become? the sun. Now you're